Lily always felt like she was living on a different planet than everyone else at school. While other girls her age were talking about makeup tutorials and the latest fashion trends, she was busy reading books about space exploration and drawing pictures of distant galaxies in her notebook. Her classmates called her the space girl behind her back, and sometimes not so quietly either. It wasn't just her love for astronomy that made her different. Lily was one of only 3 Asian students in her entire high school, and her family had moved to this small town when she was 12. Even 5 years later, she still felt like an outsider looking in through a window at a world she couldn't quite understand or join. Every morning, Lily would walk through the school hallways with her head down, clutching her books tightly against her chest. She had learned early on that making eye contact with the popular kids often led to uncomfortable situations. They weren't mean exactly, but they had a way of looking right through her as if she wasn't really there at all. During lunch breaks, while other students gathered in their tight-knit groups, Lily found refuge in the school library. The librarian, Mrs. Thompson, was kind to her and never asked why she spent every lunch period alone at the corner table. Near the science fiction section, it was there, surrounded by stories of other worlds and alien civilizations, that Lily felt most at home. But Lily had a secret that she kept locked away in her private journal. Despite feeling like an outsider, she couldn't help but notice the boys in her classes. There was David from her chemistry class, with his easy smile and the way he always helped struggling students with their experiments. Then there was Alex from art class, who had these thoughtful eyes and could make anyone laugh with his silly drawings on the whiteboard. What made Lily's feelings complicated was that she knew these boys would never see her the way she is. She wasn't part of their world. She didn't go to the same parties or hang out at the same places after school. She was just the quiet girl who sat in the back of the classroom and occasionally raised her hand to answer difficult questions that nobody else wanted to tackle. So Lily created her own world instead. In the pages of her journal, she wrote elaborate stories where she wasn't just the awkward teenager who stumbled over her words. When teachers called on her and her stories, she was Luna, a beautiful and mysterious visitor from another world who had come to Earth on a secret mission. Luna had powers that Earthlings could only dream of. She could read minds, travel through space, and see the future. But most importantly, Luna had something that Lily desperately wanted in real life: the ability to make people fall in love with her just by being herself. In these stories, the boys from her classes would discover Luna's true identity and be amazed by her otherworldly beauty and intelligence. Every day after school, Lily would rush to her bedroom, lock the door, and spend hours writing new chapters of Luna's adventures. She drew detailed pictures of Luna in flowing space robes with stars in her hair. She created entire planets where Luna was treated like royalty, instead of being ignored like Lily was on Earth. In her favorite story, David from chemistry class was actually a prince from a neighboring galaxy who had been waiting his whole life to meet someone like Luna. When he discovered her true identity, he would tell her that he had always known she was special, even when she was disguised as an ordinary high school student. Alex from art class became a brave space explorer who would travel across the universe just to be near Luna and learn about her magical home planet. These stories became Lily's escape from the lonely reality of her daily life when she felt invisible. In the school cafeteria, she would remember that Luna was actually a powerful being who chose to remain hidden until the right moment. When classmates ignored her contributions during group projects, she would imagine that Luna was secretly observing human behavior for her important mission. The stories weren't just about romance, though that was certainly part of it. They were about being seen, being valued, and being loved for exactly who you are instead of being expected to change yourself to fit in. In Luna's world, being different wasn't something to hide or be ashamed of. It was something that made you special and worthy of admiration. Lily's journal became her most treasured possession. She carried it with her everywhere, always careful to keep it closed and away from curious eyes. Sometimes during boring classes, She would flip to a blank page and start sketching new outfit designs for Luna, or mapping out plot points for her next adventure. The only person who knew about Lily's writing was her grandmother, who lived with Lily's family and often found her granddaughter scribbling away. Late into the evening, her grandmother never asked to read the stories, but she would bring Lily cups of hot tea and remind her that sometimes the most beautiful flowers grow in gardens where nobody expects to find them. What Lily didn't realize was that her careful secrecy was about to be shattered in the most painful way possible. The private world where she felt confident in love was about to collide with the harsh reality of high school social dynamics, and the collision would change everything about how she saw herself and her place in the world around her. October 15th started like any other Tuesday for Lily. She woke up early, ate breakfast quietly while her parents rushed around getting ready for work, and walked to school with her heavy backpack full of textbooks and her precious journal tucked safely in the front pocket. She had no idea that this ordinary Tuesday would become the worst day of her entire high school experience. During third period chemistry, Lily was so focused on taking notes about molecular structures that she didn't notice when her journal slipped out of her backpack and fell under her desk. The class was working on a particularly challenging lab experiment, and Lily was actually enjoying herself for once. She loved the precision required for chemistry, the way everything had to be measured exactly right to get the proper reaction. When the bell rang, Lily gathered her books quickly and hurried to her next class. It wasn't until she was sitting in English literature that she realized her journal was missing. Panic shot through her chest like ice water. That journal contained everything, all her stories about Luna, her drawings, her private thoughts about the boys she liked. The idea of anyone else reading those pages made her feel sick to her stomach. As soon as English class ended, Lily ran back to the chemistry lab, hoping beyond hope that her journal would still be there on the floor where she had dropped it. But when she reached the classroom, her worst nightmare was already unfolding before her eyes. A group of the most popular girls in school were sitting in a circle near the back of the lab, and right in the center of their circle was Lily's open journal. Jessica, the head cheerleader who seemed to rule the school's social scene, was holding the journal up like it was a trophy she had won. Listen to this part. Jessica was saying to the other girls, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Luna gazed into David's eyes and saw galaxies reflected there. She knew that their love was written in the stars, destined to span across multiple universes. The girls burst into laughter that sounded like breaking glass. Lily stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move or speak. She watched in horror as Jessica flipped through more pages, reading her most private thoughts out loud while the other girls giggled and made comments. They were looking at her drawings too, pointing at the pictures of Luna in her flowing space dresses, and making jokes about how weird they looked. "Oh my goodness, look at this one," said Katie, one of Jessica's closest friends. She wrote an entire story about Alex asking her to the homecoming dance, except she's pretending to be some kind of alien princess. This is absolutely hilarious. The girls passed the journal around, each one finding new things to laugh about. Lily's face burned with shame and embarrassment. These weren't just random stories they were mocking. These were her deepest feelings, her secret hopes and dreams, all written down in black ink on pages that were never meant for anyone else to see. Every laugh from the group felt like a physical blow to her chest. "Should we show this to David and Alex?" Jessica asked with a cruel smile. "I'm sure they would love to know about their secret admirer and her space fantasies." The other girls nodded eagerly, already pulling out their phones to take pictures of the journal pages. That's when Lily finally found her voice. "Please don't," she whispered from the doorway, her words barely audible. But her quiet plea only made the situation worse. The girls looked up and saw her standing there, and their laughter became even louder and more pointed. "Oh look, it's the alien girl herself," Jessica said, holding the journal higher so Lily could see it. "We were just enjoying your creative writing. You have quite an imagination." The way she said imagination made it sound like the most embarrassing thing in the world. Lily wanted to run forward and grab her journal, but she couldn't make her legs move. She felt completely paralyzed by the humiliation of having her private world exposed, and turned into entertainment for people who had never shown her any kindness. "Please give it back," Lily managed to say, her voice shaking. "Those are private." Katie laughed. "You left it right here on the floor. Besides, this stuff is too funny to keep private. Everyone needs to read about Luna and her cosmic romance adventures." Jessica stood up, still holding the journal, and walked toward Lily with a smile that wasn't friendly at all. "Don't worry, Space Girl. We're going to make sure your stories get the audience they deserve. I think the whole school would love to read about your alien princess fantasies." Before Lily could react, Jessica had already taken several photos of different journal pages with her phone. The other girls were doing the same thing, capturing Lily's drawings and stories to share with their friends. Lily could only watch helplessly, as her private world was being broadcast to people who would never understand or appreciate it. "This is going to be so good on social media," one of the girls said excitedly. "Everyone's going to love this." Lily finally found the strength to move. She ran forward and grabbed her journal from Jessica's hands, but it was already too late. The damage was done. Her secrets were now in their phones, ready to be shared with anyone and everyone who wanted to laugh at the weird girl and her strange stories. Without saying another word, Lily ran out of the chemistry lab, clutching her journal against her, just like it could somehow protect her from what was about to happen. She could hear the girls laughing behind her as she fled down the hallway, and she knew that by tomorrow morning, everyone in school would know about Luna and her cosmic love stories. Ryan had only been at this school for 2 months, but he was already learning how the social system worked. There were the popular kids who seemed to control everything, the athletes who had their own special status, and then everyone else who just tried to survive high school without becoming a target as the new kid. Ryan was still figuring out where he fit in all of this. Moving to a new town in the middle of his senior year hadn't been his choice. His dad's job had forced their family to relocate, and Ryan had to leave behind all his friends and start over completely. He was naturally quiet anyway, preferring to observe people rather than jump into conversations. So being the outsider wasn't entirely uncomfortable for him, but it did mean he noticed things that other people might miss. Ryan had definitely noticed Lily before, not because she stood out in the way that popular kids did, but because she seemed to exist in her own little world that looked more interesting than the regular high school drama happening around them. He'd seen her in the library during lunch, always writing or drawing in a thick notebook. He'd watched her in art class, where she created these amazing space-themed paintings that were way better than anything else, hanging on the classroom walls. What impressed Ryan most about Lily was that she didn't seem to care about fitting in with everyone else. While other students were constantly checking their phones or gossiping about who was dating who, Lily was genuinely focused on things that mattered to her. Ryan had grown up reading science fiction novels and watching space movies, so he understood her fascination with other worlds and galaxies. Several times, Ryan had thought about walking over to Lily's table in the library and starting a conversation, maybe asking about the book she was reading or complimenting one of her drawings. But every time he got close to doing it, he'd hesitate. He was still trying to establish himself at this new school, and he wasn't sure if being seen with the girl everyone called Space Girl would help or hurt his chances of making friends. On Wednesday morning, the day after the chemistry lab incident, Ryan arrived at school early and headed to the library to finish some homework. That's when he overheard a conversation that made his blood run cold. Jessica and her group were sitting at a table near the entrance, and they were talking about their plans for Lily in voices loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "I can't believe how many people shared those photos already," Jessica was saying with obvious satisfaction. "My post got over to 100 likes in just one night. The comments are hilarious." Katie added, scrolling through her phone. "Everyone's calling her the alien princess now." Tyler even made a meme out of one of her drawings. Ryan pretended to be reading his textbook, but he was listening to every word. He felt sick as he realized what had happened to Lily's private journal, and how these girls were celebrating the destruction of someone else's personal thoughts and feelings. "What should we do next?" another girl asked. "This is too funny to just let it die down." Jessica smiled in a way that made Ryan's skin crawl. "I'm thinking we should create a fake social media account, pretending to be one of her alien boyfriends. We could send her romantic messages about traveling through space together. Can you imagine how embarrassed she'll be when everyone sees her responding to fake alien love letters?" The group burst into laughter at this idea, already planning out the details of their next round of torment. Ryan couldn't believe what he was hearing. This wasn't just typical teenage teasing. This was deliberate, organized cruelty designed to completely humiliate another human being. "We should definitely do it during lunch. When the cafeteria is crowded," Katie suggested. "Maximum audience." For maximum embarrassment, Ryan looked around the library, hoping that Mrs. Thompson or another adult might have overheard this conversation and would step in to stop it. But the librarian was in her office with the door closed, and there were no teachers anywhere nearby. These girls were planning to destroy Lily's reputation even further, and no one in authority was going to prevent it from happening. For the rest of that morning, Ryan couldn't concentrate on any of his classes. He kept thinking about Lily and wondering if she had any idea what was being planned for her. During second period, he saw her walking down the hallway with her head down, clutching her books tightly against her chest. She looked smaller somehow, like she was trying to make herself invisible. Ryan also noticed how other students were looking at her now. Some were pointing and whispering, clearly having seen the photos that Jessica had shared. Others were smiling and nudging their friends when Lily walked past, as if her presence was some kind of joke they were all in on. A few students were even holding up their phones, probably taking videos to share on their own social media accounts. By lunchtime, Ryan was wrestling with a decision that felt bigger than anything he'd faced since moving to this town. He could continue being the quiet observer, staying safely on the sidelines while Lily's life was destroyed for other people's entertainment. That would be the smart choice for someone trying to fit in at a new school. Or he could do something that would definitely put him in the crosshairs of the most popular and powerful students in the school. He could stand up for someone who had never asked for his help and probably didn't even know he existed. Ryan spent the first half of lunch period sitting alone at a corner table, watching Jessica's group as they huddled around their phones, probably setting up their fake alien boyfriend account. They were giggling and typing, completely absorbed in their cruel project. Across the cafeteria, Lily was sitting by herself near the windows, staring down at her untouched sandwich. That's when Ryan made his decision. He couldn't just sit there and watch someone get destroyed while he did nothing to help. His parents had raised him to believe that good people stand up for others, even when it's difficult or scary, even when it might cost them something important. Ryan stood up from his table and started walking toward Jessica's group, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He had no idea exactly what he was going to say or do, but he knew he couldn't be a silent witness to this cruelty for one more minute. Ryan's hands were shaking as he walked across the cafeteria toward Jessica's table. Every step felt like it took forever, and he could feel his heart beating so fast that he wondered if other people could hear it. Part of him wanted to turn around and go back to his own table, pretend he'd just been getting up to throw away his trash. But every time he looked over at Lily sitting alone by the windows, he knew he couldn't back down now. The popular kids' table was the loudest spot in the entire cafeteria. Jessica and her friends always sat right in the center where everyone could see them, and they talked and laughed in voices that carried across the whole room. Today they seemed even more excited than usual, probably because their cruel plan was working so well. When Ryan finally reached their table, the conversation stopped. Jessica looked up at him with surprise, like she couldn't believe someone she'd never really talked to would dare approach their group during lunch. The other girls stopped typing on their phones and stared at him with curious expressions. "Can we help you with something?" Jessica asked, her voice polite but with an edge that warned him to be careful. Ryan took a deep breath and tried to keep his voice steady. "You need to stop what you're doing to Lily," he said simply. The table went completely quiet for a moment. Then Katie started laughing, and soon all the girls were giggling, like Ryan had just told the funniest joke they'd ever heard. "Excuse me?" Jessica said, raising one eyebrow. "Are you seriously trying to tell us what to do? Do you even know who you're talking to?" "I know exactly who I'm talking to," Ryan replied, feeling braver than he had expected. "I'm talking to people who think it's fun to destroy someone else's life for entertainment." The laughter stopped. Jessica's expression changed from amused to annoyed, and Ryan could see that he had crossed a line. But he was committed now, and there was no going back. "Look, new kid," Jessica said, standing up so she could look down at him. "I don't know how things worked at your old school, but here's how it works here. Some people are popular, some people are normal, and some people are weird. The space girl is weird, and weird people get treated like weird people. That's just how life works." "No," Ryan said, his voice getting stronger. "That's not how life works. That's just how bullies work." The word bullies hung in the air like a challenge. Around them, other students had started to notice the confrontation and returning in their seats to watch. Ryan could feel dozens of eyes on him, but he kept his focus on Jessica. "Did you just call me a bully?" Jessica asked, her voice getting louder. "I'm not a bully. I'm just pointing out that some people need to learn how to fit in better. Maybe if the alien girl acted more normal, people wouldn't make fun of her. Maybe if people acted more human, they wouldn't need to make fun of anyone." Ryan shot back. That's when he did something that surprised everyone, including himself. Ryan pulled out his own phone and opened his notes app. For months, he had been writing down observations about his new school and the people in it. Not stories like Lily wrote, but honest thoughts about what he saw and felt as the outsider looking. "And you want to know what's really weird," Ryan said, loud enough for the growing crowd of students to hear. "What's weird is how scared everyone is of being different. What's weird is how we all pretend to be someone we're not, just so people will like us." He started reading from his phone. "Jessica Torres, head cheerleader, acts confident and in control, but spends every morning in the bathroom checking her appearance 15 times. Because she's terrified someone will notice a flaw. Katie Martinez laughs the loudest at everyone else's jokes because she's afraid if she stops performing, people will realize she doesn't actually have much to say." The girls at the table looked shocked. Ryan wasn't being mean or cruel like they had been to Lily. He was just being honest about things that everyone could see but nobody talked about. "Everyone in this school is pretending to be something there. Not," Ryan continued, looking around at all the faces watching him, "everyone except Lily. She's the only person here who's brave enough to be exactly who she is. Even when people make fun of her for it. That's not being brave," Jessica said. But her voice didn't sound as confident as before. "That's just being weird." "No," Ryan said firmly. "Being weird is spending your time trying to hurt people who never did anything to you. Being weird is thinking that someone else's private thoughts are your entertainment. Being weird is getting together with your friends to plan new ways to make another person feel bad about themselves." By now, half the cafeteria was listening to their conversation. Ryan could see Lily in his peripheral vision, looking up from her table with an expression of complete surprise. He could also see David and Alex, the boys from her stories, listening intently to what he was saying. "Lily writes stories about people because she sees the good in them," Ryan said, his voice carrying across the now quiet cafeteria. "She imagines worlds where people are kind to each other and where being different makes you special. Instead of making you a target, maybe instead of making fun of her for that, we should ask ourselves why we live in a world where that seems impossible." Jessica opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. For the first time since Ryan had known her, she looked uncertain, like she wasn't sure what to say next. "The only difference between Lily and the rest of us," Ryan concluded, "is that she's honest about having feelings and dreams. The rest of us are just better at hiding them." The cafeteria stayed quiet for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few seconds. Ryan could hear his own breathing and the distant sound of kitchen staff cleaning dishes. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something to happen, but nobody knew exactly what that something should be. Jessica looked around at all the faces staring at her, probably trying to figure out how to respond to Ryan's speech without losing her social status. But before she could say anything, something unexpected happened. David, the boy from Lily's chemistry class, stood up from his table across the room. "He's right," David said, his voice cutting through the silence. "We've all been acting like jerks, and I'm tired of it." David started walking toward Lily's table, and every person in the cafeteria turned to watch him. This was the same David that Lily had written about in her stories, the one Jessica had been mocking just days earlier. Now he was crossing the room in front of everyone, completely ignoring the whispers and stares. When David reached Lily's table, he sat down across from her. Lily looked absolutely shocked, like she couldn't believe this was really happening. Ryan could see her face turning red, probably wondering if this was some kind of joke or trick. "I owe you an apology," David said to Lily, speaking loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I should have said something when people started sharing your private stuff. That wasn't right. And I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner." Lily stared at him for a moment, clearly not sure how to respond. "You don't have to apologize," she said quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Yes, I did," David insisted. "I did nothing. And sometimes doing nothing is the same as doing something wrong." Ryan watched this interaction from across the cafeteria, feeling a mix of relief and amazement. His confrontation with Jessica had somehow started a chain reaction that he never could have predicted. Other students were starting to have quiet conversations at their own tables, and the atmosphere in the room felt different somehow. Then Alex, the boy from art class, surprised everyone by walking over to join David and Lily. "Can I sit here too?" he asked. When Lily nodded, still looking confused, Alex sat down and said, "I actually think your space paintings in art class are really cool. I've always wanted to ask you about them, but I didn't know how." Lily's face lit up for the first time in days. "Really? You like them? Are you kidding?" Alex said with a genuine smile. "They're the best artwork in that entire classroom. You make other planets look so real that I feel like I could actually visit them." Ryan felt a warm feeling spreading through his chest as he watched Lily's expression change from embarrassment to happiness. This was what he had hoped for when he decided to speak up, but he hadn't dared to imagine it would actually happen. Back at Jessica's table, the mood was very different. The popular girls were looking around uncertainly, like they weren't sure what their role was supposed to be anymore. Some of the students who had been laughing at Lily's stories just days earlier were now looking ashamed of themselves. "This is ridiculous," Jessica muttered, but her voice didn't have its usual authority. "Everyone's going to forget about this by tomorrow." "Maybe," said one of her friends quietly, "but maybe that's not such a bad thing." Over the next few days, the social dynamic at school began to shift in ways that nobody had expected. It wasn't a complete transformation. High school hierarchies don't disappear overnight, but something important had changed. Students who had never talked to Lily before started approaching her to ask about her artwork and her stories. A girl from her English class asked Lily to help her with a creative writing assignment. Two boys from the astronomy club invited her to join their group, excited to meet someone who shared their interest in space. Even some of the teachers seemed to notice Lily in a new way, giving her opportunities to share her knowledge and creativity with the class. The fake social media accounts that Jessica's group had been planning never materialized. The cruel memes and jokes gradually stopped circulating as people found other things to talk about. Some students even deleted the photos they had shared, realizing that participating in someone else's humiliation didn't feel as fun as they had thought it would. Lily still spent her lunch periods in the library, but now she wasn't always alone. David and Alex had started joining her there, along with a few other students who were interested in science fiction and creative writing. They would discuss books and movies, share artwork, and talk about their own dreams and ideas without fear of being judged. Ryan found himself becoming part of this new group as well. His intervention in the cafeteria had earned him respect from students, who appreciated someone willing to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult. More importantly, it had earned him a genuine friendship with Lily, who was grateful to have found someone who understood her passion for storytelling and imagination. The most surprising change came from Jessica herself. She never directly apologized to Lily, but she stopped the active campaign of harassment. Occasionally, Ryan would catch her looking thoughtful when she saw Lily laughing with her new friends, as if she was reconsidering some of her assumptions about what made people worth knowing. Lily still wrote stories in her journal, but now she also shared some of them with her friends. She discovered that her imagination and creativity were gifts that others admired rather than flaws that needed to be hidden. The girl who had once felt like an alien in her own school learned that being different wasn't something to overcome, it was something that made her valuable. And interesting. Ryan learned something important too. He discovered that being the new kid didn't mean he had to choose between fitting in and doing what was right. Sometimes the best way to find your place in a new community is to help make that community a better place for everyone. The story didn't end with everyone becoming best friends or with all the school's problems being solved, but it did end with the understanding that every person has value, that everyone deserves to be treated with kindness, and that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to speak up to change everything.